Hi, today on Catherine Learns Stuff, I'm going to walk you through how to make this DIY travel dice tray. So let's jump in. The supplies that we need to make this traveling dice tray are a piece of faux leather. I've got an 8x10 sheet. You can have it a little bit bigger or smaller if you want the size. I'll show you how to work with any size in a minute. I've got some heat transfer vinyl to keep our faux leather from fraying later. I've got a paper cutter to cut all my bits. I've got some leftover cardboard from a cereal box, and we're going to be using these snaps to hold it together so that we can open it and close it for making it easier to travel. So let's start to assemble this. What we want to do is we want to measure off an inch on each side of our faux leather on both left and right and top and bottom. So I'm quickly going to just draw some lines on here with a pencil so that we've got this nicely marked off and so that we can draw some lines here. And this is what we're going to be using as our fold lines later. So we want to just draw them on lightly with pencil. Now I think 1 inch is a good dimension for this, but if you want, you can make it more than 1 inch or less than 1 inch. I just find that 1 inch is good for what we need. So, and it keeps the base of the box at a good size for us as well. The next thing that we have now is, now that we've got this rectangle here in the middle, we want to measure this so that we can cut out a piece of cardboard for the bottom of this. This is going to make the base of the tray more rigid. Now this is optional, we don't need to do this, but we want to have a little bit of a gap around the edges. So we're just going to mark off where we want this and then cut this out so that we've got a rectangle for this bit. And we're just going to quickly cut this out with my paper cutter. Now that I've got my base cut out here, it's going to go in this spot onto my faux leather. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to measure out a piece of HTV vinyl that's going to cover the whole rectangle. So I'm quickly going to just cut this out with my paper cutter again and have a rectangle that's the full size of this. So I'm using an old box from my pantry. This side with the design on it, you want to make sure that it's facing into the faux leather, because if you're like me and you're using white HTV, the design might come through a little bit just because this pencil comes through and we don't want to see our cookie box coming through. So you want to make sure that it's facing down. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this onto our heat press and we're going to put our vinyl on top of it and we're going to press this for 30 seconds. When working with your heat press, you want to make sure that you're applying each piece individually onto the base of your heat press so that you make sure everything is in the right spot. And then on top of this, we're going to place our HTV vinyl. We don't want to place it all as one unit because we want to make sure that this cardboard box is staying within the lines that we've drawn. So now that my HTV is cool, that I can manage it with my fingers, I'm quickly going to peel off the carrier sheet from the HTV. So now I've got my HTV vinyl pressed onto my faux leather with my cardboard inside. So I've got a little bit of an edge around some sides, so I'm going to quickly cut that off. And it doesn't matter that there's a little bit of a gap here. On this side, I don't need to worry about cutting this faux leather, but if you really want to, you can. It's just that you don't want the HTV vinyl sort of floating off to the side. So now you can still very faintly see the lines that I drew in here with my pencil before, and those are our 1 inch lines. So what I want to do is on each side, only once, I want to cut this 1 inch square, but just the one way. I want to cut it on this side, on this side, on this side, and on this side. That way it's going to give me a nice spot for my snaps to go. So I'm just going to use scissors and I'm going to cut right 1 inch here. And I've got 4 pieces that have been cut. Now you can cut them all like this on the one side or on the other side. I like to do them on each side. It kind of gives my design of the box a little bit nicer look. So now we are a little bit off of the edge of the box, the cardboard box here, and that's okay because once we start to fold this up, we want it to have a little bit of an edge, so it doesn't need to go right up to the end here. That's why we gave it a little bit of a space. So now the fun part begins. So I've got these plastic snaps. They're just like little buttons, and I'm going to pick out a color that kind of matches this. I think I'm going to use this light blue here. And I'm going to do 4 pieces, so 4 corners of them. So you need to have a male and a female end for each side so that they all line up, because you don't want to have the wrong sets. So you need 8 of these sharp bits, and then you'll need 4 male ends and 4 female ends. So before we put any holes into here, I've got my 8 backings and I got my 4 male and my 4 female ends. So I'm going to put these off to the side, and I've got my crimping tool. And what you want to do is each piece is going to connect like this. I'm going to go over top of it like this, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have them lined up the proper way. So on the outside here, we're going to put in a sharp piece that's going to push right through. But before we push it through, we want to make sure that we kind of know where it's going, because we want it to be aligned in this spot here. So I want to have this piece kind of right here. So I'm going to make my hole, push this through, and this pushes through pretty easily. And I'm going to add in a female end on this side. It doesn't matter if it's male or female on which side, but you just want to make sure that you've got the right pieces connected to each other. So now on this side, we're going to have to do a female piece. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're folding this over before we put in our other end so that it lines up in the right spot, because we don't want these off. So I can't get a good camera angle, but you want to have this in this spot here. And then you're going to poke this through all the way. Now, since we have a female end, we want a male end on this other side. And we're going to squish that. And we're going to continue this process all the way around. Okay, now all of our snaps are on. All we need to do is just snap this together. Now you'll notice it's a little bit loose around the edges here, so you just want to give it a bit of a fold here. Over time, this will have a better crease in it once you're using it more. But the idea is that this is just designed to hold your dice when you're rolling them. So that's ready to go. Now, there is different ways that you can do the snaps. I've done the snaps on this angle, but you can have them so that they are in a little bit of a different shape so that they come out, or you can have them all on the same sides, and that's totally fine. And now my dice will stay on my tray table, so I can use this in the car or on an airplane, and I won't lose my dice, and I'll still be able to play my game. And we just pull the snaps open. And it's ready to be flat packed into a game board or into a notebook. Now when you're doing this, I don't recommend using a dark colored ink. I'm using white vinyl for this. So the white HTV will actually show this a little bit. So if you're using a dark color to draw these lines, they will show up very brightly through the HTV. So just keep that in mind. Now when you're making this, what I've done is I've designed the box, the base here, to be one piece. But if you're traveling and this 8x10 piece is too large for you, what you can do instead is cut 2 smaller pieces that's just a bit smaller than this initial rectangle with a gap in between them. So what's going to happen is we're going to iron this down as well, but now we'll be able to fold it and have still a pretty solid base on the bottom, but not have to worry about having as large of an area for our traveling dice tray. But when you're measuring these out, you want to make sure that this gap here in the middle of the 2 pieces of cardboard is enough so that you can fold this in half without ripping here or without having to have these two pieces of the box touch each other. And again, we're going to do the same idea here, as you're just going to put a piece of vinyl on top of this, and we're going to heat press this down into place as well. If you don't have a cardboard box, or if you don't want a cardboard box, you don't actually need to put one in. I like to have it there so that it helps with the rigidity of the bottom, so that when we're rolling our dice, the dice have somewhere nice and hard to land. But you don't need to, so you can just leave this faux leather the way that it is and simply iron on a piece of HTV onto this. Now, when we're doing it without a cardboard box, you don't need to have these lines on here initially. You can. I find that they're helpful later because these are the spots where we'll be cutting to put our snaps on. But it's not needed if you're just doing one piece with no cardboard inside. So this is the one that I did without the cardboard base. So you'll notice it's nice and smooth, but the edges do come up a little bit. So you can just fold it with your hands if you'd like before playing your game. And it still holds the dice, so if I throw the dice in, they will roll nicely in there. So you don't need the cardboard base in there, but it does help. This one here that I made with the two pieces of cardboard so that it folds better, also it works just fine. This crease may cause your dice to jump a little bit, but again, it works just fine. And the nice thing about this one is that when we're done with it, it can fold in half and take up less space. Again, this other one that we've made with no cardboard in it also can be folded in half and take up less space. Fold it this way or that way, or any way we would like. One thing that I want to point out though is when these snaps are fresh, the connection between these two pieces, the male and the female end, is very tight, and so it can be difficult to pull it apart. I have filed these down in the past so that it's a little bit easier to open, because if you're pulling too hard, you can actually rip your vinyl and your faux leather. So something to keep in mind is that you can file these a little bit, or you can just be a little bit more careful when you're pulling it apart. So you'll notice here, this has just come right off my heat press. This one's got a little bit of bubbling, but it's quickly disappearing as the heat from the HTV is dissipating, and the design of my HTV is turning out to be nice solid white again. So don't worry if that happens, it just takes a few moments for it to go away. So now that my HTV is cool, that I can manage it with my fingers, I'm quickly going to peel off the carrier sheet from the HTV. Now I'm going to show you something here, if I can get this to work. You want to pull this sort of as best as you can. But since part of it is holding onto our cardboard, it might actually start to pull more than we want it to. I'll show you this in a sec. It might happen. So see here around the edges, it's a little bit loose and a little bit kind of gross looking. So what we can do is we can put this under the heat press again for a few seconds to melt this one more time. And there you have it, your DIY travel dice tray is complete. I've listed all the products that I've used in the details below. Also, be sure to leave a comment below if you've tried this out or if you have any suggestions on how I can make this better. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.